Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my top 12 ranked Dynasty running backs for the 2023 fantasy football season. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. And if you do want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTS. In yesterday's video, we talked about my top 12 ranked Dynasty wide receivers. So if you missed that, make sure you check that out after you watch all of today's luxurious videos. So without further ado, let's get on into things. So at number one, my number one ranked running back for Dynasty is going to be Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts, 24 years old. Now, everyone who drafted Jonathan Taylor last year at the 101 in redraft felt like they were absolutely burned. It felt like Jonathan Taylor did the nasty to them because Jonathan Taylor had a pretty shit season, running back 18 in half PPR points per game, playing in 11 games, having 192 carries, 17.5 per game, number 24 at running back, 861 rushing yards, 78.3 per game, number 22, 40 targets, 3.6 per game, number 27, 28 receptions, 2.5 per game, number 30, 143 receiving yards, 13 per game, number 47, with only 4 touchdowns in 11 games, number 41 at running back. Obviously, in 2021, things were a completely different story because even on a Colts team that wasn't some world beaters with Carson Wentz under center, Jonathan Taylor was able to excel and be the best running back in all of fantasy football. Now, the guy is only 24 years old. The only confusing thing that kind of comes to mind when thinking about Jonathan Taylor right now going forward from 2023 and beyond is the quarterback situation. We obviously know that it's not going to be Matt Ryan, but who is going to be the quarterback for the Colts in 2023? Could be Derek Carr, could be Aaron Rodgers. They could draft a quarterback. And another question about Jonathan Taylor is who is the coach going to be? Because even though it really seems like the team wants to get a new head coach, it seems like they might end up running things back with the same coach they had as their interim coach in 2022. So there's a lot of unknowns about Jonathan Taylor's situation. But what we do know is that as long as the situation is just slightly better than what we had last year, Jonathan Taylor has the upside to be the running back number one in any given fantasy football season. The guy is only 24 years old, and if you just take last season as what is guaranteed to happen in 2023, you are going to look like an absolute fucking idiot because Jonathan Taylor is very worthy of being the RB number one in Dynasty fantasy football. At number two, we move to Kenneth Walker, Sir Kenneth Walker III of the Seattle Seahawks, 22.3 years old, running back number 14 in half PPR points per game, tied with Rhamondre Stevenson. Now, he did play in 15 games, but he wasn't necessarily starting in every single game because if you remember at the start of the season, prior to Rashad Penny's injuries, Rashad Penny was the starting running back on the team. 228 carries, 15.2 per game. Number 11 at running back, 1,051 rushing yards, 70.1 per game. Number 11 at RB, 35 targets, 2.3 per game, 34th. 27 receptions, 1.8 per game, 33rd. 165 receiving yards, 11 per game, 42nd. And 9 total touchdowns, number 14 at running back. Now, going into last season, I was someone that was pretty anti-Kenneth Walker because I was banging the drum relentlessly for Rashad Penny because I believed that even if Kenneth Walker was as good as he looked in college, we all know how Pete Carroll runs this team, and I really thought that Rashad Penny was going to be the guy for a majority of the season, and then maybe Kenneth Walker could get his show towards the end of the season, or if Rashad Penny was to get hurt, that was really going to pave the path for Kenneth Walker to be the guy, and obviously that's what ended up happening, and Kenneth Walker was out fucking standing. The only issue with Kenneth Walker's game as a rookie was that he was very kind of dependent on those big plays because you'd see runs where Walker's getting -2 yards, -3 yards, rushing for 2 yards, 3 yards, and then he'd have these big plays where he busts one off, fucking stiff arms a defender, Marshawn Lynch style, and runs directly into the end zone, right? You see these crazy burst plays. The guy has incredible speed. So I think going into his sophomore season in 2023 and beyond, he's going to continue to be able to build upon what he put up in his rookie year. Kenneth Walker only 22 22.3 years old. The Seattle Seahawks offense probably going to get even better. Obviously, as we assume Geno Smith will be the starting quarterback, they have some picks, obviously, from the Russell Wilson trade to continue to build on this team. I expect Kenneth Walker to be the starter all year long as a workhorse back in 2023. Pete Carroll does like the workhorse running back, so I'm a big fan of Kenneth Walker going forward. At number 3, we have Breece Hall of the New York Jumbo Jets, 21.6 years old, RB number 7 in half PPR points per game, 7 games played. Obviously, he got hurt last season, which really sunk a lot of fantasy football players' dreams. Because while things didn't start off on fire for Breece Hall, it was very clear that this guy, once he becomes the starter of the Jets, even regardless of who the fuck the quarterback was last year, Breece Hall was going to be able to put your fantasy football team on his back. No, he was going to be able to do that. 80 carries, 11.4 per game, 52nd, 463 rushing yards, 66.1 per game, 44th, 32 targets, 4.6 per game, 40th, 19 receptions, 2.7 per game, 49th, 218 receiving yards, 31.1 per game, 27th, 5 total touchdowns, 31st at running back. So obviously, the stats aren't going to make your eyes ejaculate, right? The stats don't tell the complete story of how good of a running back this motherfucker Breece Hall is. Breece Hall, from what I saw last year, this guy was going to be, if he played all year, the offensive rookie of the year. Now, the quarterback situation is still pretty topsy-turvy for the New York Jumbo Jets. It is still pretty unknown. They fire their offensive coordinator. They bring in Nathaniel Hackett, which could end up stabbing these guys repeatedly like the death of Julius Caesar. But ultimately, I do genuinely believe that Breece Hall is going to be just fine regardless of who the quarterback is. He is a clear workhorse running back in the National Football League. If the guy is given the workhorse touches, I would not be shocked at all. Wouldn't even surprise me one bit if this man is the RB1 in fantasy football next season. This guy has a great offensive line when healthy. Obviously, the offensive line ended up folding like a table that the Bills Mafia jumps through, but ultimately, we can't just say in 2023 it's guaranteed that the offensive line is going to get blown up again, right? Don't think that's going to happen. So Breece Hall should be in for a solid season. And I know some people are like, oh, do I want to draft a running back after an injury like what Breece Hall had? Now, in the past, that was the case, right? Clear fade. But, you know, it's not like we have the medicine from the fucking 1970s, right? When these guys would get hurt and one injury like Breece Hall's, you're finished. But that's just not the case anymore. At number 4, we move to, at this point, right, these top 3 guys, I love them all. Then you kind of get to a point where it's like, do you want to go with youth or do you want to go with a guy that's a little bit older but has an immense amount of skill? And that's kind of the conundrum we come to here at number 4, where we go with more of a veteran player. At number 4, we got Christian McCaffrey, CMC Dynamite of the San Francisco 49ers, 26.6 years old. Running back number 2 in half PPR points per game last season, playing in 17 total games, 244 carries, 14.4 per game. Number 9, 1,139 rushing yards, 67 per game. Number 7, 107 targets, 6.3 per game. Number 2, 741 receiving yards. Number 1 at running back, 43.6 per game, 13 total touchdowns. Number 3, doing this partially on the Carolina Panthers, partially on the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I know a lot of people, once he got traded to the 49ers, were a little bit worried because Kyle Shanahan is kind of known to not really just use one running back, right? Every single year in San Francisco, while we have some hot games from a guy like Raheem Mostert, or some of these guys have these good games. It's like, oh, that's nice, all fine and dandy, but every single week you kind of be pulling your fucking hair out trying to figure out who you want to start on the 49ers, and that was the case early on this year for the Niners. But once they traded for Christian McCaffrey, it was very evident that they traded for Christian McCaffrey for a reason, and that is to utilize his play style as a phenomenal pass-catching running back who can run in between the tackles and is one of the best running backs in all of the NFL. The only thing hurting him in these rankings is the fact that he's 26 years years old and he's not 23 years old, 22 years old, right? That is really the only negative stamp you can put on him. I know going into redraft last year, a lot of people started to get their panties in a bunch about Christian McCaffrey. They start to panic. They start to think, oh, Christian McCaffrey's been banged up all these last couple of years, blah, blah, blah. But then you have to realize that if he doesn't get healthy, that's what I was thinking last season. So if he doesn't get healthy in 2022, how good could this guy be? What is his ceiling? And it's running back number 1. So again, there's going to be people that panic. They're going to be a little bit nervous to draft Christian McCaffrey. But ultimately, even at 26 years old, 27 next season, guy's still going to be amazing. Still going to be great. So even though some people might rank some of the young bucks ahead of a guy like Christian McCaffrey, just don't know if I can do it because I really don't see this guy falling off in the next 3-4 years, if I'm being honest with you, aside from injury. Knock on wood. We do not root for injuries. At number 5, we got another guy, a little bit older, Saquon Barkley of the Giants, 26 years old, running back number 5 and half PPR points per game, 16 games played, 295 carries, 18.4 per game. Number 4 at running back, 1,312 rushing yards, 82.0 per game. Number 4 at running back, 76 targets, 4.8 per game. Number 6, 57 receptions, 3.6 per game. Number 7, 338 receiving yards, 21.1 per game. Number 14, and 10 total touchdowns. Number 10 at running back. Now, when I wrote Saquon Barkley's name down, he is a free agent, but I wrote Giants next to him. There's a player later on that we're to talk about. You could probably figure it out, a top 12 running back that probably won't be on his team next season and going forward. So when it comes to Barkley, I think he's going to end up either getting franchise tagged or getting re-signed to a solid deal. Now, as a backseat NFL GM, you know, the armchair quarterback, the armchair GM, I think you shouldn't really pay a running back a shit ton of money. Because we've seen over who's winning the Super Bowl, most of the time the team that wins the Super Bowl has a running back they're not paying $7 gazillion to. We saw this with Zeke. Paying Zeke, was that a good idea? No, not at all. Not at all. Dalvin Cook starting to fall off a little bit. So again, I'm not here to fucking hammer in on Saquon Barkley, tell you that I think Saquon Barkley is going to fall off, or that I know jack shit about being an NFL GM. I'm just saying this from an outside perspective as someone that pays very close attention to the National Football League from January 1st to December 31st, right? I give a fuck about the league all year long. I don't just stop paying attention once the NFL season ends. So that's just my view on things. I think Saquon will be back with the Giants in 2023. Now, if he goes somewhere else, then obviously his ranking is going to shift. So, you know, put a pin in those things, put a pin in that. If he's a Giant under Brian Daboll, again, like, I've sucked off all these guys, gotten down on my knees, given them the metaphorical gawk, right? We know how good Saquon Barkley is. The situation, though, is definitely a little bit gloomy, but not as gloomy as the guy we're going to talk about a little bit later. At number 6, we got Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos, 22.7 years old. Before we break down Javonte a little bit more, please make sure if you are new to the channel to hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hit that like button. It really does help me out a ton. So Javonte of the Broncos, 22.7 years old. The Broncos bring in Sean Payton, trading a first and second round pick for him. Nathaniel Hackett was a certified fucking dumbass, a dunce, a stooge. It's great to see that he is gone, and now this team is going to have a excellent play caller in Sean Payton. Sean Payton, who, I don't know if you guys saw that, someone fucking with a humongous cock fucking revved their engine outside and scared the shit out of me. But at the end of the day, Javonte Williams is now in a better situation because Hackett is gone. Javonte Williams also got hurt last year. Sucks. But again, modern medicine, I'm not panicking too much. And it's not like he got hurt in week 16, 17, he was hurt. He only played 4 games last season, so 22.7 years old, RB 42.5 PPR, 4 games played, 47 carries, 11.8 per game, number 69. Very nice. I like my wife. Oh, wow, wow, wow. 204 rushing yards, 51.0 per game, 71st. 22 targets, 5.5 per game, 57th. 16 receptions, 4.0 per game, 56th. 76 receiving yards, 19.0 per game, 71st. And 0 total touchdowns. Now, going into last year, I was off of the Javonte Williams train in redraft based upon his average draft position. In Dynasty, I was fine drafting him, but in redraft, I was thinking, you know what? Nathaniel Hackett, I thought he was going to be all right. I didn't think he'd be that bad. but they had Melvin Gordon. I was thinking Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams. This is going to be another brutal running back by committee. People were talking about Javonte Williams is going to get the ball, all this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, you know what? I worry about this. I worry about the fact that this might be a running back by committee situation. And at his ADP, early on in fantasy drafts, I could not take him. Technically, I was right because he got injured, but he did look good in those games. Now they bring in Sean Payton. Sean Payton is the opposite of Nathaniel Hackett. Nathaniel Hackett, we make fun of him. Sean Payton is a fucking genius, Albert Einstein-esque. So Javonte Williams is going to be just fine. Russell Wilson's going to figure things out with Nathaniel Hackett gone. I'm a big fan of Javonte Williams' skill set. So some people who have watched my videos over the last couple of years since Javante's been in the league might think Nick doesn't like Javonte Williams. And that was the case because back-to-back years I didn't like drafting him in fantasy, but that doesn't mean that I don't like the player that he is because I do really think he's incredibly talented. At number 7, this is where we hop back into the old crew here, just because of how good I think this player is now. Some people will say that I'm a little bit high on this guy because of who's below him. But again, you have to understand that when you're drafting in a dynasty league, age isn't everything, right? You don't just need to draft someone who's 23 years old. Like, you could set your team up for success for the next couple of years, drafting a guy like Austin Ekeler, who's 27.7 years old. Now, I'm not saying that Ekeler is going to last 6-7 more years in the league, right? Like some of these other guys, but 2 more years of greatness is very possible. RB1 in half PPR points per game, 17 games played, 204 carries, 12.0 per game, number 20 at running back, 915 rushing yards, 53.8 per game, number 17 at running back, 128 targets, 7.45 per game, number 1, 107 receptions, 6.3 per game, number 1, 722 receiving yards, 42.5 per game, number 2, 18 total touchdowns, number 1. Now, entering last year's redraft season, I was basically the number 1 Austin Ekeler fan. Now, being a fan of Austin Ekeler last year, I'm not alone, right? Everyone likes Austin Ekeler, but I was talking about how Austin Ekeler might be deserving of the 101 in fantasy football. And if you drafted him there, which I didn't because I thought it was a little bit crazy, but I said it was possible, paid dividends. He was amazing, fantastic. This is a team that brings in Kellen Moore, who should be a better helper for a guy like Justin Herbert, you would think. Now, I'm not a big fan of Kellen Moore, but things can't get much worse than what was happening in LA with the Chargers, especially if you remember what happened in the playoffs against the Jaguars. Ekeler is maybe the best running back in the NFL, all around excellent. In terms of pass catching, he's probably the best in my opinion. Great team, set up for success next year. Again, will Ekeler be fantasy valuable 5 years from now? Probably not. So if you want someone 5 years down the line that's valuable, maybe you want to draft Travis Etienne, my number 8 running back instead. But again, you're kind of picking hairs here because Ekeler for the next 2 years, I feel like is basically, if he's healthy, locked in to be a top 3 guy. But Etienne isn't, but Etienne has that longevity on him, right? And maybe even Etienne plays even better next year. Just another year with Lawrence, and then obviously bringing Calvin Ridley back. So Travis Etienne of the Jaguars, 24 years old, running back, 24.5 PPR points per game, 17 games played, 220 carries, 12.9 per game, number 13 at running back, 1,125 rushing yards, 66.2 per game, number 8 at running back, 45 targets, 2.6 per game, number 22, 35 receptions, 22nd at running back, 316 receiving yards, 18.6 per game, 15th, and 5 total touchdowns, 31st. Now, a lot of people like to kind of bring up the idea that Etienne is this excellent pass catcher. And while Etienne is good at pass catching, he's not like Kamara. He's not like Ekeler. He's not like McCaffrey. He's not like Barkley. Now, if he catches the ball, he can do crazy things. Remember early on in the season last year, this motherfucker said he was like scared of catching the ball. He was nervous. And that was scary. Now, obviously, he figured things out, but I don't think Etienne is necessarily one of these guys that you could project and be like, maybe, right, he got 45 targets this year, 2022. 2023, could he see 60 targets? Yeah. But is he going to see 80, 90 targets? I just don't think so. I really don't think so. Looked good last year, though. Really topsy-turvy season for him. Really roller coaster rides, very high highs, low lows, right? We see these great games out of Etienne where it's like, holy shit, Travis Etienne. Then we see games early on in the season where it's like, James Robinson's looking like the guy. Then they get rid of Robinson, and now it's Etienne. Now, Etienne doesn't really have that much competition. So again, to kind of put a bow on my thoughts on Etienne, he looks good. Is his ceiling RB1 in fantasy football, though? I don't think so. I just don't think so. And I hope I'm wrong, right? Hope I'm wrong. I like Etienne the player. I just don't know if that's in his range of outcomes. At number 9, we got DeAndre Swift of the Lions, 24 years old, RB 19.5 PPR points per game, tied with Najee Harris. 14 games played, 99 carries, 7.1 per game, 43rd, 542 rushing yards, 38.7 per game, 37th, 70 targets, 10th, 48 receptions, 12th, 389 receiving yards, 11th, and 8 total touchdowns, 16th. Last year was a year where I really sold myself into DeAndre Swift. I really like DeAndre Swift going into the season. I've been a big fan of DeAndre Swift ever since he came in the league. I think he is very comparable to Alvin Kamara. I think he is amazing pass catcher, great when he can carry the ball. But last year, it was pretty clear to me that he was hurt, right? That the team didn't want to over-exude his usage when they had Jamal Williams. Now, next year, going forward, who knows where Jamal Williams will be, if he'll even be on the team next season. A lot of people will be nervous about DeAndre Swift, and rightfully so, right? We saw what happened in 2022. They're going to panic. Will that happen again going forward? I really don't think so. The player, again, I compared him to Alvin Kamara, and over the last couple of years, Alvin Kamara, to me at least, when you just watch the games, right? Maybe the stats don't tell you he's one of the best running backs in the league, but you fucking whip the microscope out, you inspect things, you watch the game, you'll say, holy shit, this guy's amazing. And to me, DeAndre Swift looks like Alvin Kamara. I really think they're comparable. And the only reason why Swift is so low is because there is still that inkling of thought in the back of my head that says, is Swift really going to be like, is Dan Campbell going to roll out Swift next year as that guy? Or is he going to kind of still continue to pull him back, kind of grab our balls, twist them a little bit, if you know what I'm saying? So at number 10, we move to Josh Jacobs. Now, Josh Jacobs, instead of being of the Raiders, we got him as a free agent, 24.9 years old, because I don't think he's going to be a Raider next year. I think at this point, saying that he's going to be a Raider seems a little outlandish. RB 4.5 PPR points per game, 17 games played, 340 carries, 20 per game. Number 2, 1,653 rushing yards, 97.2 per game. Number 1, 65 targets, 3.8 per game. Number 11, 53 receptions, 3.1 per game. Number 10, 400 receiving yards, 23.5 per game. Number 8, and 12 total touchdowns. Number 6 at running back. So Josh Jacobs was a guy that in redraft I faded last year. I wasn't very excited about his dynasty upside either, because we all knew going into the season, and we all thought, at least going into the season, especially me, I really thought this, that Josh McDaniels, head coach of the Raiders, this motherfucker loves the running back by committee. We saw it in New England. He loves running back by committee. He doesn't just roll out this workhorse back. And then this year, he just went a little crazy and said, fuck it, workhorse running back. And Josh Jacobs looked exquisite. Chef's kiss. Manu Fweek, he was amazing. There's really nothing else to say about him except for amazing. And then there was another dig on Josh Jacobs that we've had over the years, is that when Gruden was there, it was like, oh man, Josh Jacobs, he's going to get more targets, blah, 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 fluff, 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 dick suck, suck, suck in the offseason. And then you watch the games, it's like, where the fuck is Josh Jacobs in the receiving game? And then this year we finally saw kind of everything get put in the pot, chefed around a little bit, cooked up, right? And he played amazing. Now, what team will he be on next year? Who knows? Who knows? And that will change his ranking. So right now he's number 10. 24.9 years old, 5th year in the NFL. I like Josh Jacobs. I really do. At number 11, we move to Rhamondre Stevenson of the Patriots, 24.9 years old. He also had 12 touchdowns last year. Josh Jacobs, if I didn't mention that, number 6 at running back. Patriots running back Stevenson, RB 14.5 PPR, tied with Kenneth Walker points per game. 17 games played, 210 carries, 12.4 per game. Number 17 at running back, 1,040 rushing yards, 61.2 per game. Number 12, 89 targets, sneaky, really good receiving running back. Number 3 at running back, 5.2 per game, 69 receptions. Very nice, I like. 4.1 per game. Number 4, 421 receiving yards, 24.8 per game. Number 7, and 6 total touchdowns. Number 22 at running back. Now, Patriots offense, Bill O'Brien, offensive coordinator, should be better, realistically. Stevenson is still the guy, and it seems like the Patriots want to actually utilize the guy and not just every drive toss a new running back in that you've never fucking heard of and he scores a touchdown, right? Because if you ever had Patriots running backs in the past, like in the 2010s, the 2000s, you draft them, you play them, and you're just praying to the football gods above that this is the game, that this guy has the game, right? Unless you had like James White or something, it was pretty up in the air which guy you want to start every week. And Stevenson kind of cracked that mold over the last 2 years, and he looks really good. This is a Patriots team that I am pretty low on as a whole, but I do think it would be a little bit outrageous to say that Bill O'Brien isn't going to at least do something more than what Matt Patricia was doing last year, because Matt Patricia, he had no idea what he was doing. At number 12, we've got 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, my guy. His only problem, the only wart on the profile is that the motherfucker's 27.1 years old. Running back 6.5 PPR, 17 games played, 302 carries, 17.8 per game. Number 3, 1,525 rushing yards. Number 3 at running back, 89.7 per game, 37 targets, 2.2 per game. Number 31, 27 receptions, 1.6 per game. Number 33, 239 receiving yards, 14.1 per game. Number 24, and 13 total touchdowns. Number 3 at running back. So Nick Chubb, another solid season. The guy just, and it's funny, last year going into redraft season, I talked about Nick Chubb, and I talked about how this guy is like the least exciting running back to draft, because you draft him and you just thinking this guy's going to be somewhere in the range of like RB 9 to 15. You draft him, you're not fucking elated that you drafted him, but he plays in your lineup every week, churns the points. You're happy with him, right? You're not sad you drafted him. You're just not thinking after the draft or during the season, you're like, wow, I'm super pumped that I have Nick Chubb. You just think, oh, he's a guy I play every week. This year, running back 6 in 2022, so a little bit better than I thought. Deshaun Watson can't be as bad as he played in 2022. There's just no way. There is no fucking way. No way. I just can't see a scenario where Deshaun Watson comes out in 2023 and is as bad as he was last year. Now, if he is, maybe that's a knock to Nick Chubb. Maybe it is. But Kareem Hunt, I don't think is going to be back. So it really is going to be that true workhorse role. And maybe we see an increase of targets going forward for Nick Chubb. Again, the only real wart here, the only thing that you could possibly punch into Nick Chubb and be like, Nick Chubb, let's move him down the rankings, because he's 27 years old. That's really it. So thank you guys all so much for watching. I really do appreciate you guys. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as that like button down below. I'm going to be dropping some more Dynasty content going forward, leading up to the draft, obviously. And then after that, we start to focus more on into redraft. There'll be some redraft videos as well, but a little bit more Dynasty focused as of recently. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good